Hi, boys and girls, it's Mr. Wilder. I figured since I did a song for the younger guys, I'd read a story for some of you that might be interested. Funny story about this is I happened to be out in the garage and I found a box of books that I had from when I was teaching. So I have some for little kids, some for the older kids I taught. And this book, you can kind of see it's a little worn out. I used to read this to my 5th and 6th graders each year when I was teaching those grades, and I figured this is a story though that kids love. 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, even the little guys can listen to it and follow along. But it's called The Indian in the Cupboard, and it's by Lynn Reed Banks. And so I figured I'd read a little bit of it each day and work our way through this book since we're at home, and it'll give you guys a nice little break to be able to just sit and listen to a story. So chapter 1 is called Birthday Presents. It was not that Omri didn't appreciate Patrick's birthday present to him. Far from it. He was really very grateful, sort of. It was without a doubt very kind of Patrick to give Omri anything at all, let alone a second-hand plastic Indian that he himself had finished with. The trouble was, though, that Omri was getting a little fed up with small plastic figures, of which he had loads. Biscuit tins full, probably 3 or 4 if they were all put away at the same time, which they never were because most of the time they were scattered about the bathroom, the loft, the kitchen, the breakfast room, not to mention Omri's bedroom and the garden. The compost heap was full of soldiers which, over several autumns, had been raked up with the leaves by Omri's mother, who was rather careless about such things. Omri and Patrick had spent many hours playing together with their joint collections of plastic toys. But now they'd had about enough of them, at least for the moment, and that was why when Patrick brought his present to school on Omri's birthday, Omri was disappointed. He tried not to show it, but he was. "Do you really like him?" asked Patrick as Omri stood silently with the Indian in his hand. "Yes, he's fantastic," said Omri, in only a slightly flattish voice. "I haven't got an Indian." "I know," said Patrick. "I haven't got any cowboys either," said Omri. "Nor have I. That's why I couldn't play anything with him." Omri opened his mouth to say, "I won't be able to either," but thinking that might hurt Patrick's feelings, he said nothing, put the Indian in his pocket, and forgot about it. After school there was a family tea, and all the excitement of his presents from his parents and his 2 older brothers. He got his dearest wish, a skateboard complete with kickboard and kryptonic wheels from his mom and dad, and from his eldest brother, Adil, a helmet. Gillen, his older brother, hadn't bought him anything because he had no money. His pocket money had been stopped some time ago in connection with a very unfortunate accident involving their father's bicycle. So when Gillen's turn came to give Omri a present, Omri was very surprised when a large parcel was put before him, untidily wrapped in brown paper and string. "What is it?" "Have a look. I found it in the alley." The alley was a narrow passage that ran along the bottom of the garden where the dustbins stood. Dustbins is another word for garbage cans. The 3 boys used to play there sometimes and occasionally found treasures that other people, perhaps richer, neighbors had thrown away, so Omri was quite excited as he tore off the paper. Inside was a small white metal cupboard with a mirror on the door, the kind you see over the basin in old-fashioned bathrooms. It's kind of what we would call a medicine cabinet now. They would hang them on the walls in old bathrooms. You might suppose Omri would get another disappointment about this because the cupboard was fairly plain and, except for a shelf, completely empty. But oddly enough, he was very pleased with it. He loved cupboards of any sort because of the fun of keeping things in them. He was not a very tidy boy in general. Tidy means clean, like picking up your room and keeping it nice. I have a feeling there may be some of our friends out there that aren't always tidy when their parents want them to clean up their rooms. He did like arranging things in cupboards and drawers and then opening them later and finding them just as he'd left them. "I do wish it locked," he said. "You might say thank you before you start complaining," said Gillen. "It's got a keyhole," said their mother, "and I've got a whole box full of keys. Why don't you try all the smaller ones and see if any of them fit? Most of the keys were much too big, but there were half a dozen that were about the right size. All but one of these were very ordinary. The unordinary one was the most interesting key in the whole collection, with a complicated lock part and fancy top. A narrow strip of red satin ribbon was looped through one of its curly openings. Omri saved that key for last. None of the others fit, and at last he picked up the curly top key and carefully put it in the keyhole on the cupboard door just below the knob. He did hope very much it would turn, and regretted wasting his birthday cake cutting wish on something so silly, or rather unlikely, as that he might pass his spelling test the next day, which it would take real magic to bring about, as he hadn't even looked at the words since they'd been given out 4 days ago. Now he closed his eyes and unwished the test-passing wish, and wished instead that this little twisty key would turn Gillen's present into a secret cupboard. The key turned smoothly in the lock, but the door wouldn't open. "Hey, Mom, I found one!" Take a look. I don't know how well you can see the picture of his whole family sitting around as he's got his birthday presents there, opening them. I'm going to leave off right there for today. Tomorrow I'll finish the chapter 1, birthday presents, and see what ends up happening once he can get that cupboard open. You guys be good to each other, be kind, make sure you're being safe, take care of your little brothers and sisters. If you can read to them the best you can, and I hope I see you guys soon.